have Warren Carr, DGCPM, and also National Caucus. We've got Rob Fairbridge, Teamsters 155 Transport Coordinator. Diana Donaldson, Production Sustainability Advisor. Hans Dayal, PM with the DGC.
Hi.
And Andre Champagne from Hollywood Trucks. All right, I'll just let everybody just briefly introduce themselves. Just tell us a little bit about your career and how you've been able to incorporate sustainability throughout it. Just briefly.
Can you hear me? Oh, there we go. So I've been around since the early 70s, so I've seen quite a bit of evolution, particularly in the last, I'd say 10 to 12 years, where the hybrids and electric power was being noticed. In the last 3 or 4 years, definitely it's come on the radar. I've been involved in a lot of different types of productions under a lot of different circumstances and locations in Canada and elsewhere in the world, and seeing that those adoptive habits that are starting to happen is really encouraging, but it's not enough, and we'll get into that later.
It is working. There we go. I've been in the industry since about 2017, introduced to EVs through Hans in season 2 of Virgin River, and I've been on Virgin River since season 1. We've definitely seen a lot of change as far as vehicles and EVs in the industry up to this point, and it's just growing. So I think it's definitely getting much better for all of us.
Hi, my name's Diana Donaldson. I've been in the industry since about 2008. I've worked as a unit manager, production manager, coordinator, and in the last 5 years I've moved into sustainability. So I first started seeing, I think, the need for this early on in my coordinator and management days. And it wasn't until I started striking shows that I truly realized the impact of what happens with all the stuff that we buy over seasons and seasons, and where does it all go. And that's what kind of spiked my interest to move into sustainability, and now in the last 5 years that's where I've spent most of my time. So I'm deeply in it now.
I'm going to borrow yours.
Yeah.
I'm going to use the one that works. I think I know everybody here, it feels like. I'm Hans. I was in locations for many years, and that's probably what spurred me to want to be involved in this as a side project, side hustle, because frankly we waste a lot of stuff, and I would spend the last part of my day driving around the Lower Mainland looking for a dumpster to throw bags of garbage into when we didn't have a dumpster handy. But just watching the waste over the years and seeing how wasteful we are and how really irresponsible our business has been spurred me to think that maybe we can be more responsible, and that we could take some initiative and be a region and a jurisdiction in the whole global production community that led on that particular topic. And we really have done that, I think, and so I think that it's a courtesy to people like Warren and Rob and a lot of people that are in this room who have made sustainability something that people talk about globally and recognize BC as being leaders in. And so I just want to keep that train going and keep encouraging that behavior. You want this?
I think this guy, yeah.
So we're good?
Yeah.
Yep.
Hi, Andre Champagne, founder and CEO of Hollywood Trucks. I actually started my career on the other side of the table and was a studio executive for a while, and then began producing my own projects, and then got into transportation around 2008 and bought a fleet and started, servicing projects. And it was right around 2012, 2013, I really wanted to start pushing the vehicle. You'd be out on set, you'd see 1,800 amp plants running all day, burning a gallon of fuel a minute. And I just said, we have to do something about this. And not knowing what I didn't know at that time, started working on trying to build off-grid vehicles, our energy autonomous assets at that time. And that was 2013, 14. And we finally got there around 15. And then from that point forward, it's just been working in the industry all on the vehicle side and trying to get everything in the transportation side to as zero emission as we can.
Thanks, guys. Rob, with over having been on 6 seasons of Virgin River and your upcoming 7th, can you tell us a little about the experience on that show? What season did you start using EVs, and how did you feel about them first?
Well, we started using EVs on season 4. That was when we actually came in quite strong. We used a plug-in on season 2, which was my first introduction to EVs. That's sort of where the seed was planted. Hans asked for a plug-in That was really what we knew of at that point. So we brought that in, and that was my first experience. In season 3, we had a little bit more conversation about it, and then came into season 4, and we just sort of pushed it in. It wasn't a matter of, hey, we're going to try this and it's not going to work. It was, we got to make this work. So we brought in some cars. We started off with Tesla 3s. There's pushback from drivers when you're going to say, we need to introduce this. So in my experience, it was a matter of going out with the drivers, explaining the vehicles to them, explaining there's going to be some challenges. We all, as transport coordinators and captains, we know that the cast drivers have a lot of pressure on them to be at locations at the right time, to be able to get cast back and forth without any kind of problems. So the range anxiety on cars was a real thing, and it still is to this day with my drivers. But they all understand that they've got the support of the captains, the production, myself, that if they're having a problem, we'll walk them through it, we'll find a solution. And I think that's really a lot of what we've been dealing with.
Diana, you also worked with Rob on Virgin River. How did you find the attitude? Did you find attitude shifts when people first started using them, and then once they had gotten used to them?
Yeah, obviously. You know, we have a lot of people in this industry who have been doing this for a long time, and EVs are relatively new. So, you know, you've got a whole new workflow. You've got people that are going to be using them for the very first time. The first season that I was on Virgin River was season 5, when I was working with the crew, and at that point we'd brought in QR codes, and you know, and it was amazing. Some people, you know, were struggling to use a QR code, which obviously is very, you know, effective to know how to use later on. So, and you know, and I've had people that they had no idea, they were really scared about it, they struggled with it at first, and then once they got the hang of it and they understood it, you know, they actually feel really good. You know, they have a sense of like, wow, I've conquered the EVs and I'm moving on in the world, and you know, this new thing. And I mean, as drivers and as people, as you know, filmmakers, I think we're always striving to learn more, be better, understand more. So I think that in general, people, once they've had the chance to have some exposure, get to drive it, you know, there's a level of confidence that definitely rises with it. And yeah, we see that. I think everybody at the end is, very few people that drive them and don't have a negative experience. I would say more, like probably 80% or higher have a very positive experience after the first kind of round, you know. And then I think it's just exposure and getting adjusted to it.
Hans, do you have any attitude shift stories, anything that you had to really fight for people to adopt?
I think everything. Because like everyone's saying, I think the novelty of things, I mean, you're rattling the cage when you're trying something new, and that takes a little while to change. But thankfully, I think there's lots of little things that you can try and do, and the EV is the perfect thing to sort of get people to try something new. And once they can think themselves through the process of it, because it is rejiggering their brain a little bit, they get better for it. But I think that the big thing that we have to try and drill into people, and this, particularly the crew and the people that are working, is that it's an opportunity for them. It's an opportunity for them to be better, to sell their performance, to sell their work ethic, to sell who they are, what they're about. And if they can wrap their head around that idea, I think people take a lot of pride in being able to adopt new things and develop their work ethic, you know. And so that's really been the biggest thing. I was just in Alberta for the last year and a half, and you would think that there, I mean, I was almost like the Antichrist coming in saying, we have to electrify because everybody's got a brother or a sister that's working in the oil and gas industry. And over the course of 7 or 8 months, I mean, I would joke around a lot. I would be obnoxious sometimes. I would get in their face about it sometimes, not in a mean way, but just in a very direct way. And over time, people just had a lot of affection for that because they knew that I was engaging with them. And eventually they got around to it. You know, they got really into trying new things and not wasting. And that's really what fundamentally this is all about, is not burning the money, not wasting the money, not throwing things out, but using it. And I think that that's what people want to do.
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment on all of that, which adopting is really important. Testing and driving is really important. But, you know, we have to face the fact that we are an entrepreneurial industry that's grown over decades. And in order to grow, people have bought things. People have bought trucks. People have bought fleets of trucks and gear. So when you look at our 155 brothers and companies who have invested a lot of money in gas vehicles. Embracing the transition to electric involves two things: understanding how good it is and phasing out of your inventory. And that's a big challenge that everybody has. Can you imagine? You own 20 vans that you've leased over the years, and you're not at the point where you're at a buyout, but you've got to somehow phase into electric and out of that, and that's a lot of inventory to lose. So pushback comes from a business point on one level because of that investment. So we have to be sensitive to that, but also keep nudging along. It's kind of important.
Can I just add to that too? So a lot of the things that the governments don't hear from us in terms of industry is how progressive we can be and how experimental we can be in the film industry. And I would agree wholeheartedly with Warren that this transition is an opportunity for us as voters and as citizens and people in British Columbia. The government wants to hear about how we're going to tackle. Now we have a whole new pressure with what's happening down south, protectionism and things that are going to change the way that we have to do business. But one of the things that we can do when we have a very strong grid. We're very, we're further ahead than a lot of other regions with electrification. Well, one of the things that we can tell our governments is help us convert what we already have to electric vehicles. I think that, and I might be speaking out of school here, but I do think that Vancouver Mobile is trying to do something right now where they're taking some of their trailers and taking it right out of burning fuel and turning it into electric chassis. So those programs are out there, and we have to pressure our governments and pressure our leadership to talk to the government to say, hey, help us convert, and we're going to change the world. And we could do that right here in BC, but we need that spirit of innovation, we need that energy, and people speaking to their MLAs and to the politicians and leadership, and use our studio partners and Real Green as well to lobby to make that change, because we can do that here, and because we've already got a good head start. I was approached by someone from Africa to talk about it. She was a sustainability coordinator for productions in Nigeria, and she was asking me what we're doing and how we got ourselves to the point where we're using batteries the way we are, that we're using EVs the way we are, because they repurpose and recycle quite well in Africa. They have to. They don't have the same access to resources that we do. But one of the things I said was we had to experiment. You have to try things, and I think that's a crucial thing for us to indulge and sort of encourage from our partners. Just try it out. Just try out that car, try out that generator, try out that battery, see how it works for you. It may shift the way that you think a little bit, and you have to break yourself out of your routine, but at some point it may actually be quite rewarding.
Andre, I'm sure you can speak to the kind of attitude shifts you've had to see starting back in 2014-15. People probably had no idea what was coming.
Oh yeah, when we began down this path, like you're saying, this was 2011, 2013. And I was working on electrification of our assets, and like some of the panel said here. In brief, we sold our entire fleet, 380 assets, and I called it my old R&D/diesel fleet. And every single thing we're building now is either 100% off grid or as clean energy as possible. So we went through that on the internal side, let's say from private sector, small business, which was not easy. But from when I began down the road, I'd walk into a studio in 2012 and I'd say, hey, I've got this brand new solar-powered trailer. And it was like, oh yeah, you can go talk to sustainability back in the third closet on the left. And I was like, okay. To now, the conversation points have thankfully really changed dramatically. And now on the emails, the CSO, the CCO, the CFO, and the CEOs are all being CC'd. And that part I saw, at the top in the corporate level, and environmentally friendly best practices are being, brought down. And then even on the production level, I saw things begin to change as technology changed. So, as the vehicles were operating better, as individuals, whether, it was on the transportation side, Teamsters unions, any of those, we're starting to try and really say, oh, wow, these things really work, and not only do they really work, they're making my life actually pretty easy, because I'm just pulling the trailer up, putting it out, popping the pop-outs on, and I'm good, So I have definitely seen from 2012 to 2025, where we are now, the quantum tipping point forward, and the majority of that has happened in the past probably 3 years. that I've noticed, and it's great. It's, finally now, you walk into the studio and they don't send you to somewhere else. You're like, okay, let's have a real conversation.
Cool. I'd like to talk a little bit about cost savings, where we can see them, obviously in fuel. Do you have any, Warren, any stories you can share, tips on how being more sustainable can also save you money?
It can save money. If you go to the dgcgreen.ca website, we have a fuel calculator where you can actually do comparisons about using level 3 generators, level 2, and versus EV batteries. So cost savings can be significant. It's a matter of logging and keeping track of what you're spending on fuel or not. My last show, which was quite a while ago, we did use battery power, not so much with EVs. We did use battery power to keep certain things running on set, and we saved a lot of money in diesel. I can't actually quantify it here, but I would estimate somewhere around $7,000 to $10,000.
Rob, do you want to speak to that?
Well, I can't really speak to the savings, as Diana is more the numbers person. Being a truck driver myself, my whole life I've been a truck driver, and slowly phasing in EVs, sustainable, any kind of sustainability in the transportation sector has been difficult for all of us as far as drivers. And we see diesel going into a tank, and that's for us is reliability. That's always been the reliability. So when I can see a truck leave the yard now, and I know that it's not using the diesel, I know that it's saving money. I know that it's saving our environment, and that's from a Teamster standpoint, that's what I see. I don't see the money end of it. What I see is the difference in what we're doing for the economy, what we're doing for our health, and obviously what we're going to be doing for production and what we can save. So that's sort of what I see as a transport coordinator.
I think I'll take this opportunity to derail us here from electric vehicles altogether. Short answer, if you want to save money on fuel, don't drive your truck, don't move it. I think the conversation, when we start looking at the inverse pyramid of, recycle, reduce, reuse, and we start looking at like reuse, reduce, recycle, and actually before that we go with rethink. And rethinking this entire operation is the number one thing that we actually need to do. There's a little saying in the biz of like, the location costs go over to transportation because, sometimes we'll have, and no offense to all the production managers here in the room, but when you're budgeting, you're looking at one thing, right? And you're thinking, oh, great, I'm getting this great cost over here for parking. Isn't that lovely? Oh, well, guess what? It's a 20-minute shuttle now to go to set, and now you're going to have shuttles doing this the whole day. There's your fuel. You know what I mean? And we need to be thinking about this from a fuel perspective. And I think as, the times change and fuel becomes more of a budget line item, in the past, fuel has always been an allowance. It hasn't been actually budget line itemed because we never know, right? Well, the price of fuel is $1 today and $2 tomorrow. It's impossible to gauge, right? But we need to actually start measuring this at a different level, right? We need to start looking like, what are our unit moves? Are we moving effectively? Are we moving the crew? And again, to speak to transportation, to finally, be up here on the stage saying something for them. We can't be moving from Squamish to Chilliwack, overnight and doing these, 3-4 hour moves on these guys that are already done a 17-hour day. We need to start being more logical about this. And, and we're all feeling the AI pressure down as well as we look at like less and less location heavy, productions. And it just needs to be something that we need to be looking at, right? We are going to move. BC is a beautiful vista place. Potentially that's what people are here for, to see our beautiful areas. But are we moving unnecessary, right? Like, can we cheat things? We have to start getting more creative. If we don't have to move the unit, don't move the unit. And then we start looking at, okay, we're going to move the unit, of course. That is what we do. We drive around. But now let's be more effective, right? Can we move somewhere where we're going to plug in? Can we move to a base that already has, infrastructure so that our base camp can be, our circuses can be 100% electric, that we're already off a generator when we start that, right? Can we make sure that, where we're parking has the infrastructure? These are all part of the conversation, right? So before we even get in a vehicle, we're looking at having a better strategic plan, having stronger logistics overall, and then we start looking at the different vehicles. And then it's, yes, of course, and which vehicles does it make sense? Like as Rob's saying, we have to push it, and we also have to get the job done, right? The show will go on whether or not we're in an EV or not, as we all know. So we have to be, again, we have to be thinking about this, right? Do we have the right truck that's electrified? Do we have the right vehicles? Anything, as it stands right now, hybrids, there's no reason for you to have any rented vehicle that's not at least a hybrid. That's just, if you're renting anything gas, for the vehicles, for the smaller ones, not the trucks, hybrid, absolutely right out the gate. There's no reason for not that. But then in addition to that, can we electrify, right? Any of the people who are ATLs that plug in, anybody who's going to the office, right? Anybody who has an ability to plug in, or even plugging in overnight, which I don't like to push because I think that we need to be very concerned about the narrative that when you start pushing an overnight personal plug-in, now you're assuming that somebody has a garage, now you're assuming that somebody has power they can plug into. And I don't think that we should be, pigeonholing certain people to be able to be drivers or not, right? We have to take all of these things into consideration, right? So we have to just start rethinking as a whole. And so I think that's one of the biggest things. But then, when it comes to cost savings, it's a no-brainer. I mean, half the thing is idling, right? It's the number one thing. And we're actually, Rob and I are feeling pretty good right now because we've been saying for the last couple of years, you need to get solar panels or you need to get something that can charge the battery when the truck's not running and we're draining it with the tailgate. And we're finally starting to have people listen to us and say, hey, yeah, we're going to put in a solar panel that'll trickle down to the 9-volt battery that controls the whole operating system of the truck. And so, you're not going to have this tailgate problem. And, we need to get ahead of those kind of solutions and find out where listen to the drivers, find out where they're having real problems, and then get ahead of those, right? How can we help make this an easier transition? How can we, help move the narrative along? And then on that as well, just to say, electric vehicles are not this is one tool, and we're all using a tool that is available to us right now, but we have to be aware of the other tools, right? We have to be aware of hydrogen, we have to be aware of solar, we have to be aware of all of the other non-oil and gas options that we have, and start looking there. And then, sorry, just one more on the on the money of this, because of course we do see, there's direct savings when we look at how much the fuel costs is versus how much we look at the charges are, and even the premiums. It's all negligible, and we do end up coming out with spending less money. But in addition to that, on the health, idling on set with these cast cars, I just worked on a show that didn't have as many electric vehicles as I'm used to, and I was floored to see this again, with my eyes wide open, fully awoke, to look at this and say, oh my God, they're idling right in front of craft services. It's literally blasting the exhaust into a tent and then a truck with no windows. We need to be thinking about this, you know what I mean? And this is a health and safety, this is a energy, this is a money, this is everybody. This is all hands on deck. And also just in sustainability. Sustainable, it's in the name, right? Sustainability. That's sustaining where we're at. This is the bare tip of where this conversation starts. If you really want to have this conversation, we're talking about regenerative, we're talking about renewable sources, we're talking about a major shift. Sustaining is the bare minimum you can do.
Can I add to that?
Yeah.
All right, how to follow up on that. I wanted to go back to just a little bit further into that, was the PMs, producers, anybody sitting out here, it's going to be imperative that you support the transport coordinator. Stand behind them, give them the support, know that there's going to be lots of things going wrong. Everything's going to go wrong. Drivers are going to hate them, casts are going to hate them, everybody's going to walk up and say, why are we doing this? Your accounting teams are going to hate you. Okay? There is no easy solution when you're trying to take a credit card and reconcile that, but you don't have a receipt because they went to a charging station on a phone app and they clicked it in there. And your accounting team's going, but I can't put this through because somebody down south is saying, no, we're not going to accept that because we don't have a receipt. So there's so many more things behind this that your transport coordinator is going to be dealing with, not just with the drivers, not with just trying to keep everybody calm there and say, hey, don't worry, we're going to make this work. But now you've got a driver who's getting in trouble because they can't produce receipts. So they're going to come back and say, I'm not driving this car anymore. And then what happens is that driver starts talking to other drivers in the industry, and it floods. Everybody starts talking about how they hate this. And that's what happened on my show. We started season 3. We came in with some cast vehicles. Within a week, they were all gone. That was it. They disappeared. I didn't even get a full 2 weeks out of those cars. I had to go back out there and reintroduce the cars slowly and come up with a solution for what the drivers were doing. So now I'm out driving every vehicle that we've brought onto the show, and I personally drive each one of those vehicles, so I know how far can I go, where can I charge them, how am I going to charge them, what do I not like about that vehicle, so when I give it to a driver, and they look at me and go, what do I do? I go, this is all your solutions. Here's everything that I learned about this car. And that is what we need to give the transport coordinators the option to do. If we really want to do this, it's your transport team working with all the departments, working with your LX team to move these big generators that now can only be moved with a 5-ton flat deck truck. You can't move them with a pickup. They're too heavy. So now you're having this big truck and they have to be moved quickly to set to replace the other battery. If those two teams don't work together, it's not going to happen. You're going to have set go down because the battery started to die and they have to replace that. We have set in motion where set has not even noticed when a battery has been replaced. And that's because the teams all work together. And that starts at the top. It starts with everybody in the production office saying, we will support anybody that has a problem here, and how will we rectify the problems. If you just leave one team to say, it's on you, those cars are all yours, it's not going to work. Because that transport coordinator, that captain, the co-captain, and everybody below them need that support. They need to know that if they have a problem, they have somebody to go to. And if I'm not available, my team knows they can go straight to the PM, they can go to anybody in the office, and they can get support. So I think that's just something that I'd like to put out there for everybody.
I think that's really good advice. There's always going to be challenges, but you can learn from them. Does anyone else want to speak specifically to the challenges that you have faced and what still needs to come around as far as electric vehicles and
absolutely.
changes?
Well, in what Rob's saying, like I fully support, when I have the opportunity to work with Rob, I'm fully supporting Rob, I'm fully supporting his team, right? And we're often coming to each other, hey, there's a problem, and then we talk it out, right? Like, what do you need? What do you need, right? Like it's, and so, first season that I worked with those drivers, they came up and said, we don't know how to do this. We need like a how-to, we need an accounting solution, right? We had a huge problem with accounting because of the P card, and it's just, everything that should be simple just isn't. So, so we had a lot of barriers that we had to get past, right? And we had to develop new systems. We had to develop a system that worked with accounting, that worked with, that, appeased everybody all the way through. We had to work with the drivers. Part of my job as a sustainability advisor when I'm working on a show is I provide tech support to the drivers, and sometimes it's very mild tech support because it's just somebody being like, I forget what app this is, and it's just, they just need somebody, it's 6 o'clock in the morning, they have to charge the driver, like they've got to pick up that cast in half an hour, they're stressed, and just having somebody on the other end of the line that's like, yeah, it's okay, just, help work through those things, that helps, right? All of these things help. When people know that they're supported, then they know that they can take these risks, right? So as Rob's saying. And then in addition to that, as far as like money goes as well, production managers out there, paper is not enough, right? You can't just, if you want to reduce your fuel costs, just stop paying everybody fuel. Do you know what I mean? Like that's not going to work, right? And if you trigger the cast, like you have to rethink this, right? It's not just, how much was on paper? How much did, all of these trucks spend? What's on the P cards? It's also, how far did the crew go? Like, again, we have to start thinking about this, right? Like, are the costs getting transferred over to other people and we're just not seeing it, right? Because we're not getting the full impact of this. So again, it's a challenge.
Can I defend the production manager?
Go for it. All right, one time.
I'm going to defend the PMs and the producers that are targeted unfairly, I think, in Diana's rant.
Thank you, Hans.
I might be looking at you to help me out, Warren. I would just remind you all too that we are the priority, that like what our industry is the motion picture industry. Like we're trying to get creative people to express themselves on screen, and it takes a great deal of infrastructure and a great deal of talent and a great deal of creativity to do that. Not just creativity in picking the right barn in Abbotsford, but also creativity in terms of how do we manage these actors, how do we manage these spaces, how do we manage all these people that we have to move around. So bear with those PMs and producers that maybe you feel like you're seeing it very clear as day, that it's easy to just bundle everything together and say, hey, we can just shoot this whole thing right here in this little box. But we're dealing with a lot of people creatively who are saying we can't do that because it doesn't tell the story the way that we want to. So we have to honor that. That's our first priority, I think. I would go, maybe not as adamantly as you guys, because you're in the trenches with it, but I still believe that every choice that we can all make while we're doing all those things can have that lens of sustainability on it. And when we kind of enlist and engage our creative partners, our writers, our directors, into this greater, I think what the greater good is out of this movement, right? I think that they start to think that way too, and they realize that moving is not going to help them. So they can make those compromises themselves, and then you're not putting it on the production managers, the producers, to move the circus, you know, overnight from Squamish to Abbotsford, right? So I think that that's part of the engagement that we all have to do as agents, and as, this is the echo chamber. Like, all the people that aren't here today are the people that we have to convert and bring into our religion of doing this. And a part of that is finding the ways where we can meet people at the level that they're at, with the jobs that they have that sometimes we don't understand. I don't understand what's going on for a lot of writers, for example, where their head's at, because they don't seem to write, for example, a 48-minute episode of television. They write a 70-minute episode of television, and they want us to find a way to put it in that box of 48 minutes, and we're getting screamed at from a studio executive to also deliver that 48 minutes, but that's not what the script reveals, right? So we have to find our own language, use our own tools, use our soft skills to be able to engage people, to say to them, hey, I need this episode to be 48 minutes. I also need you to be as responsible to the planet as possible, because your home was next to a home in Los Angeles, got burned down, and we don't want that to happen here. Nobody wants that. Let's fix this thing, and let's be the best that we can be. And I think that that's the tack that I would take, and I would suggest to anybody. It doesn't matter the cost. The cost savings happen when people start to put that lens on, and they know that they're not throwing the money out the door on something that's wasteful. If they know that they're not going to burn the money, that they're not going to throw it in the garbage, they're not going to throw it out at the end of the show, they start to think differently about it. And I think that that's the tactic, and that's the tool that we can use to encourage people to get into sustainability. And the money savings happen. I'll give an example. The portable electric batteries that were developed right here in Vancouver have gotten used all over the world. Well, why are they getting so popular everywhere? Well, if you go to big movies, like I saw this great picture a couple years ago, the last James Bond film, of Daniel Craig sitting, I think a lot of people have probably seen this photograph, Daniel Craig sitting on one of the portable electric volt stacks having a cigarette. I mean, why is this battery was adopted almost instantly? Because the first time Mark came to us with testing out one of these batteries was in 2016. And this was like 2019 was this photograph was taken, right? So 3 years. It went from a little lab in East Van to Coquitlam all the way to the UK. Well, the reason why is because gaffers and lighting departments started to see, hey, I don't have to do a huge run of cable to put that light way out there, 2 kilometers out. I want to light up this entire, whatever it was, the streets in Turkey or the streets in Bogota, Colombia for this James Bond sequence. I don't need to put a generator close to it and run a mile of cable to that light. I can put a battery right beside the light, and boom, we're off to the races. It saved time, it saved money, it saved the cable run, it saved the labor. I did an estimate on our show, the show that I shot in Alberta. I was saving 60 man days a week in rigging and running cable because I had a slew of batteries. So the cost savings happened. Now the gaffer and the lighting team saw that, and they were like, well, now this is the way we're going to do everything. They've adopted that now for whatever shows they move forward on, right? You have to find the places where people are, make the suggestion, throw the idea at them, say, hey, I'm giving you the leeway, like Cappy's saying, like we've got to support people when they try to do things that are new. Give them a little bit of leeway to do it. Find them where they're at. If it's just going to be one change that they're going to make, let them make that one change. If it's going to be 200 changes, you guys have taken this really far, and you're now running days where you're not burning any diesel at all. Not everyone can do that, right? So we have to find those ways to just get people where they are. The savings will come, and people will see it. The best example is that slide that we saw of the EV, right? Over the life of a car, it is saving you money. The cost out front is pretty high. It happens. Anyways, Andre.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, Mark's ears would be burning. He's one of my best friends, and he and I actually met in 2015 at Universal Studios. We were both taking, again, I'm a vendor, so my goal was always to build assets and then rent them to the studios. And Mark doing the same thing. So when he, founded Portable Electric, we both went to see Shannon Bart at Universal, basically right on the same day, and I met him, and it was just, we need this. I need your battery, and he needed our trailers, and that's where it really started to change. And from a cost perspective, you know, I've seen it firsthand because, like I said, having been on both sides of the production, you know, the first thing we noticed when everything really changed was when we had the data. And so, you know, when every vehicle can give you the quantifiable reports, this is your asset on your production from day 1 to day 67 or 127, and it has burned 0 ounces of fuel, it's produced this amount of power, it's consumed this amount, and here it is in live time. That's when the tipping point for us as a vendor really changed. And then also, like you guys are talking about, the other thing that I would always tell production, I was like, look, we never turn our vehicles, we never turn them off. So literally just pull up, put the pop-outs out or whatever it might be, and you're good. So from the production stance, you know, on driver logs and everything, we were then allowed to bring our drivers in a little bit later and cut them even earlier, you know, and so that was saving time and money there. And also from the safety perspective, you know, the drivers didn't have to be out there 3 hours after again. They're usually first on set, last to leave. And so that's a long day, you know, for them, and they're tired. It's safe. So we saw all, I mean, truly material cost savings, and we were able to quantify it. And that was where we start to really see things change.
Andre, I want to give you some time at the end to talk about what Hollywood Trucks is doing.
Oh, sure.
It's pretty exciting. But Warren, I think you had something you wanted to add. And I also wanted to have everyone start thinking about, we're seeing just in the last few weeks especially, so many climate action rollbacks, especially down south. And, you know, federal government just stopped their incentive for EVs. I think it was getting too popular and it was costing them too much money. But with seeing all these rollbacks and cutbacks, what motivates you to keep going and keep being sustainable?
You're asking me?
Yeah.
Well, we have a planet. It's finite. And one of the most interesting facts I saw some years ago was about an island in Alaska that during the Second World War there was a garrison of people that were put up there, and they landed some elk up there so they could kill the elk and have meat to eat. When the war was over, no one took the elk off, and gradually they ate all the food, and gradually they died off. That's a story in Easter Island. That's a story in a number of other places of the world. So we have a finite situation here that we're actually witnessing a total degradation of our planet. There is examples all over about what's happening. So inspiration, yes. We should be inspired to continue this particular mission forever and grow it if we can. If we can spin it into other businesses, because I think we can be an example to other businesses. Take, for example, the number of trucks you saw outside Rogers Arena for Taylor Swift and motorhomes and all that kind of stuff. I'm a member of the Canadian Live Entertainment Society, and it's tough to knock on that door. We're trying to get through, but we will. So we're not only teaching our own people, we're trying to show examples to other industries. So it's an inspiration. Yes, we have to keep at it. So may I go on with? Okay, so I have a couple of questions. Hands up, how many people representing a supplier are in the room? Come on, put them all up. Okay, hands up, how many production managers are here? 4, 5. How many location people? Okay. In BC, in Canada, there's over 460 production managers across the country. BC and Ontario being the biggest one. Here, we're somewhere around 150 production managers here. And how many PMs did I count? 7? So it's like people paying attention to what we are doing, we have to pull that group in. And we were talking a little earlier about planning. Well, you know, with everything that we do, where do you make a show? The show, my rule is you make it in pre-production. A show is made in the prep. And we get beaten back a lot of times by people who are looking at budgets and saying, oh, well, so does the gaffer need 3 weeks? Or does the transportation coordinator need this, or locations? That's the biggest place where we can plan placement of generators, movement of the crew, parking, all those kinds of things, because so much waste happens when we're running and gunning. Flying by the seat of our pants, that's where we're sucking back fuel and people's hours and all that kind of stuff. A few years ago on a Disney movie, we were parked at a school in Coquitlam for about 2 weeks. We pulled in those batteries over there exclusively for the catering truck. So they plugged in at night and plugged into some house power, but not much, but plugged in at night. So at night, they didn't have to drive their refrigerator truck back to base or their catering truck back to base to plug in and refuel and do whatever. They left it there. So what did we save? We saved the fuel of all those vehicles going back and forth. We saved the hours of all the drivers who were going back and forth and the chefs because they reported to location. So those didn't seem like much, these little wheeled-in batteries, but all the time that it saved, and it made for a safe situation where our drivers weren't working, our catering people weren't working 18 hours. They were getting actually 14-hour days, like prep to wrap. So adopting means trying the pieces. And that's what Hans says, is try the pieces, because they do work. And so now what we have to do is try, and when we have another one of these events, for all of you PMs that were here, and location people that were here, bring 2 people. That's all we need, just keep it growing. Because we're not gonna get into all of these over here without that discussion and without people seeing the merits.
Just to continue a little bit on what you said there, Warren, that's like spot on. I just want to give a quick example. We used to run on Virgin River with 5, 6 generators, diesel generators, when we were out on the road. We now run with 2 diesel generators and 4 batteries. So that gives you just an idea of how much fuel we're not burning, and I'm not talking about cost, I'm just talking about emissions. That gives you an idea. So daily, when we're on the road, we have decreased that much in emissions. That also translates into the safety. Drivers not having to haul the fuel to fill this stuff, drivers not having to move these generators that are filled with fuel, having to worry about all that kind of safety. So it's not just emissions, it's not just that direction, but it is. There's a lot of safety aspects behind it, safety for everybody. So now, going back to the question, what is my incentive? My incentive, I have a 14-year-old and an 11-year-old, both sons. I look at not only their future, where the world is going, where the global, I would like to say the global heat wave, really. I mean, things are just getting warmer, right? But I also look at, you have to move forward. You have to teach people that we need to change direction. So one of my incentives is looking at my children and going, I'm going to teach them that this is what we need to do. Not just for their health, but also for their financial gain in the future. If you stay behind, you stay behind. And that's where you stay. If you teach somebody to progress forward, they'll move forward with everybody, and their future is going to be better in all aspects. So that's my incentive.
Incentives to keep going. Well, first of all, I think that the film industry is actually a wonderful place to start, because this entire industry is built off of navigating insane changes, right? Some guy in LA in flip-flops is like, I've got an idea, and then we're like, we're going to make that happen. Like, as crazy as your idea was, we'll figure out how to actually shoot that. And so we're creative problem solvers. That's what we are. Everybody in this industry is creative problem solvers. So here is a very big problem that needs a lot of creative solutions, and so that's one of the inspiring things, I think, with the film industry as a whole. And I think, I think on that, like, again, we can get inspired. People can do things like, we can do shuttle runs instead of having everybody drive. We need to start thinking outside of the box. And again, I just feel good that we have creative problem solvers like ourselves in this industry on this. And then on the other side of it, there's no option. Everybody, people always come up to me because I'm working in sustainability now. It's been like 5 years. I'm like, oh wow, sustainability, that's so cool. People are getting interested in that. I'm like, interested in sustaining your life. Like, it's kind of a weird concept, right? Like, so you're interested in maintaining what you have, which is breathing. Yeah, good start. After that, I mean, it's not like we're like pledged up, like the 1.5 degrees, right? Like we blew it, by the way. Last year we had a 1.5 degree year pretty much the entire year, right? So, but the Paris Agreement is actually not just to not hit 1.5, is to not hit 1.5 for more than 20 years, which is why 2050 was our like kind of, you know, shining date, and now it's probably more like 2020 or 2044. We're 5 years ahead, you know? But yeah, there's no B plan unless you're on the Tesla Mars kind of mission, which I'm not so sure about that as a, you know, solvable option. But it's not like we're going to fail the 1.5 test and that's it. Nobody gets their sustainability certification, but we go on. That's not an option. We are talking about the world getting increasingly hotter, there being increasingly more storms, there being climate change, climate destruction, you know, natural gas, pollution. This is what we're talking about, and it's not going to get better. Like we need to change as fast as we can to get ahead of the damage that's already been done to make things better, but they just will get worse. Like there's no option of pulling out. Pulling out is essentially suicide. Like that's really what it comes down to emotionally, but also like realistically, you know, we have to keep fighting, so there's no option to stop, right? That's the real motivation.
There's an interesting book out there called Field Notes from a Catastrophe. It's written by a New York Times columnist. It's a bit dated, but it's really an interesting read about the anthropogenic thing that's happening on our planet. So it's recommended reading if you can get to it.
I need a drink, and I don't know if it's allowed. Is it okay if I smoked a joint right after this too? 'Cause I think I need to calm down and find some love or something. Pretty intense. A lot of pressure. Feels a lot of pressure, Diana. What I was gonna say in terms of what keeps me going, and I hope that people find whatever it is that keeps them going. I mean, I'm a parent too, so I obviously think about my kids and what the world's gonna look like and how it's burning up. And then of course you watch the news and you're seeing what's going on down south, and like, to your point about all these programs being sidelined and pushed away and targets being thrown out the window. I'd say maybe the tack for us, like I think everybody here that's here probably feels much the same way. That's why they're here. They're invested in it. Some folks that are going to be here, and this is not a bad thing, are here because they want to make money and they want to earn a living and they want to sell something new, and they're trying to develop new ideas and new technology to do that. But I do think that one of the things for me as a Canadian and as a British Columbian now, and I'm an adopted British Columbian because I didn't grow up here, but what I've found out from living here all these years, the last 30 years, is that people here really love nature. They love being outside. This industry has a very, very amazing story in British Columbia. The film industry in BC is one of the great stories that this province can share and tell. And I would love for sustainable filmmaking to be something else that came out of that amazing story. I mean, when I got here in the 90s, it was X-Files, and it was like a small cottage industry that was just adjacent to what was going on in Los Angeles. And then it blew up, and we became kind of the #1 place to make shows outside of LA in the world. And we've lost a bit of that. But we want to get it back, and I think this is one of the ways that we can do that, is to take pride in all the novel things that we do, all the technology, all the great, healthy, positive things that BC and Canadians do day to day anyways. So that's what really inspires me, is just seeing that. We're watching, you know, the US go through what I think is probably its darkest day in a long time. And we can decide for ourselves that we want to be at the, you know, at the front of that and be the other side of that, which is be the smiling, happy, kind, generous, loving people that we are, and we can infuse our business with that. You know, it's. I'm sorry, I did smoke a joint before this.
If you're looking for hugs, you can get them from Hans. I'm sorry, I don't know if my comments.
I don't want to get written up for hugging someone.
Well, I mean, you know, I'm not here actually representing anybody. I'm not representing DGC. I'm not representing IATSE. I'm certainly not representing 155. I'm not here for, you know, anybody but sustainability, actually. So I'm really sorry if I'm breaking your hearts by telling you that, you know, test driving the new Hummer is not what's going to be what saves the world. That one action won't do it. Sorry.
Hey, that's my Hummer.
Yeah, no, it's okay. It's a good start. It's a good start. But no, I'm sorry if the alarm bell just got rang a little bit and you're like, oh man, I need to smoke a joint and have a drink. Well, actually feel that energy inside of you and consider this your wake-up call. No, you need to start thinking about sustainability more. You can still do those other things, but you know, start thinking about it.
Well, I think about it a lot.
Andre, you can speak to that, and I'm also going to put up a slide of your your last iteration of trailers, and you can tell us what we can see coming towards us in the future with vehicles.
Yeah, well, first of all, I wish I could clone these guys and just put them on every production. But no, I guess what drives me in it is I have to. I love it. I have to, and that was what drove me in the beginning. So I always say, like, I mean, when I sold the first fleet, in 2019, and everyone said, well, what are you going to do now? And consulted for a bunch of different electric vehicle companies. I just looked at them and I said, why are you doing it again? And I said, because I didn't finish what I started, and I haven't gotten there, and we haven't gotten there yet. And I said, there's still just gigantic amounts of change that can occur. And what I wanted to do is come back into it and say, when I leave my career and I finish this, if I walk on a set or if I walk somewhere and I never see an internal combustion engine again, and you never hear it, you don't see smell the dirty air, anything, then I felt like I did something to help. And so that's why I'm getting, quote, back into it now. And I want to tell everyone, like, I want you to think about this for a second, because you're going to see it within, I would say, probably 5 years or less. When we walk on a studio lot right now, you look at all these vehicles, and generally, it doesn't matter what studio, where you're at, there's hundreds and hundreds of vehicles on the lots, and they're all plugged in to the grid, and that power's coming from somewhere. Within a certain amount of time, you're going to walk on a lot, and every vehicle, is not only, it'll be plugged in, but it's not going to be pulling power. It's going to be sending residual power back to the grid and being positive on that stance. And I want you to, see and know that there's a term coming called V2G, which is vehicle to grid, where every vehicle is going to be its own mobile power plant. And I can tell you, you're going to see those from us in about 90 days, but it's real and it's coming, and that to me is going to change things and really shift it forward, where the fear, the range fear, all of the things that we've seen through the years that is there. It is there because tech hasn't gotten to that place. But I always tell people, just think about this. If you had a PV panel on a vehicle and it was, let's say, 40% efficient, because most of them are about 21, but once you start getting to like 40s and 50s, which will happen, and then you're replacing the current iron phosphate on it with solid state, you're going to start to see, I always say autonomous driving's cool, but autonomous energy is badass. And that's when you're really going to see a change, when the vehicles start producing their own power, consuming dramatically less, and you don't even need to plug them in anymore. And that's going to happen, So I guess it's funny because when I look at some of those photos that you just put up there, like that top left photo, that was the first off-grid vehicles we ever built, and that was a base camp. That was 2015, and so, or even the one on the bottom right there, that's Leo DiCaprio's trailers and stuff. That was an off-grid base camp, 2016. What you're going to see rolling off what we have now is going to blow that out the water. It'll be something that I think is going to change the way people view logistics in film and television, but just in general forever.
Can you tell us a little bit?
I kind of did, I can't, well, like I said, the vehicles, our whole goal with my whole focus was always create an autonomous energy. So not plug it into the grid, but you got to start somewhere. So I think when you're building these assets, everyone focuses on, can I produce power, can I produce power? It's not about producing power first, it's about reducing consumption. It's about the efficiency of what you're building, and when we started building vehicles, we were, doing a lot of retrofits and stuff because that was all that was there. And then we said, okay, if we're really gonna make these formulas work, and if they're gonna produce more power than they're consuming, then we have to start with the actual core of the vehicle itself. And so we started designing and developing from ground up, and now we build everything by hand to, first of all, take in the smallest amount of power as possible, And then, you develop the system around it. So most people, even when they build a house, they'll build the house and then their last thought is, okay, I'm going to put PV inverters and battery, but it should start the complete opposite, where make the house ultra efficient, give it substantial R value, and build it efficiently. And then when you're putting the system on that, then going off grid or producing more power than you're consuming becomes relatively easier. Now on the vehicles, it's extremely difficult because you got DOT regulations, you got 8-foot wide, 36-foot box, or 53-foot, depending on what it is, and so you're limited real estate. So even when I had the chance, like those Class 8 semis right there, I've been waiting for those things for like 9 years, and they're part of the solution, because now once you take an off-grid 53-footer and tie it into that Class 8 semi, and you've got 5 or 6 of these, like one hooked up to wardrobe, one to the honey wagon, all the talent trailers are off-grid. Now you've got like 7 and 8 megawatts of battery storage at base camp with 130,000 watts of solar on the roof. You have a mobile power plant. Like the day of like even worrying about, will we ever hear or when's the battery going to run out? That's just going to be obsolete, and that's coming, and that's coming fast, and so that's the part that I get excited about.
I want to thank everybody here for your honest and heartfelt opinions and thoughts. It's been really inspiring for me, and I was wondering if there's any questions coming from the floor. Anybody have any questions for our panelists?
They've heard enough.
Andrich, everybody will be sticking around for a bit. If you want to come and talk to anybody or keep the conversation going, that's welcome. But I really appreciate everybody coming down here today. Thanks very much.